Hi everyone, I'm Big, I'm on my own. That means it's my turn to review some computer games. Following on from Little's review of Beat Saber, which you might have seen last week, I'm going to today do Creed and Thrill of the Fight. This is my first solo review. I originally planned on doing Creed, Thrill of the Fight, Punch Pad Workout and Box VR. But then, after playing them, it felt like two are actual boxing games and two are more for boxing training. So, stay tuned, like and subscribe, and I will get around to doing them in a couple of weeks. For those of you that are new to Big and Little Play, we love VR. Little is more of a fan of the rhythm games. I prefer the fight in the combat games. I suppose a couple of years of doing Krav Maga adds to that. Except VR hasn't got to the stage where you can kick people in the groin and elbow them yet. So this one's going to be as tricky as possible for me. As a lifelong Rocky fan, I'm probably going to have a slight bit of bias, but I'm going to do my best to be objective and do it from the games I play alone. But if the Rocky movies have taught us anything, we need to do a training montage before we get to the main event. When we originally got the PSVR back in May, Creed was the first game we actually bought. So excited. Especially when Bill Conti's music starts playing at the beginning. I'm sure a little bit of P came out, I was that excited. The training element of the game is really fun. It's really interactive. You can get to walk around the gym and try out the pieces of training equipment as you go. There's at least 10 bits of training equipment that you can go on. But my personal favourites are the punch mitts, because you have Rocky himself holding them. You actually get to be in the freezer, where you can hit the chunk of meat. I'm not going to say beat the meat like I did on a stream once by accident. And the treadmill is actually really fun. All you're doing is that. It's actually a good little workout. The training games in this are actually made into like little mini games. There's high scores on there, so you can have a global high score, and you can even see where you rank amongst your friends. As you work through career mode, before every fight, naturally, there's a little training montage that you get to do before every fight. Really frustrating if you can't get 5 stars in every single one. Okay, I'll move on to Thrill of the Fight's training montage. There's not as much training to do in this one. I think there was 4 bits of equipment off the top of my head. You've got the heavy bag. The mechanics they've got down for the speed bag are really good, which I unfortunately sucked at. The training facilities in this are aimed more at technique and precision as they are in Creed. It's really good on some exercises where it actually knows what punches you're doing. A great element is it tells you how hard or how fast you're actually doing those individual punches, so you know which one's the best or which one's need more work, really. There are some silly modes in there too, so where you can fight against Halloween characters. The ghost mode part is really fun to test your reflexes. Okay, onto the main event, the fights. Back to Creed. The fights felt really cinematic, the graphics are good. Back in the days before lockdown was there, we had a funny story where my mum tried it out and then freaked out when she saw Rocky stood there watching her outside of the ring. Although it's slightly imposing when you stood there toe to toe with Ivan Drago. The fight mechanics are okay. There was times where you'd throw a punch and your hand wouldn't move, but you're just left with this blue halo of your actual original hand there, and your glove stayed still, which was slightly frustrating. I really like the Ricky Conlon fight. It's actually like a scene from a Rocky movie with the different cutscenes from the different rounds as you're working through. Just be aware though, because it can cut in and at one point you've got to block straight away before you get punched in the face. The game itself isn't that difficult. Even on championship mode, don't get me wrong, it's a lot harder, but it's still doable. Exhibition fights though seem to take it to a next new level. All the characters from the original franchise are on there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only ones I can see that are missing are Tommy Gunn and Spider Rico. Eventually I will get revenge on Ivan Drago again as Apollo Creed, but right now, unfortunately, I haven't done that yet. Some of the things I didn't like about Creed, I tried it on the PSVR. So on the PSVR to move you have to do the hands, like a chain punch, like locomotion. But when you're trying to when you've got to constantly face the camera, you're doing your locomotion, then having to quickly press the buttons to turn round to your opponent. Character's stamina's bad. You could do an 8-hit combo, and before you know it, your gloves are flashing, and poor Creed is huffing and puffing away. So you've got to keep your guard up there to obviously recharge your energy. It felt like any punches would work. So your gran, who used to play the Wii boxing and just throwing a fist around anywhere, would actually work on this game. I think my biggest annoyance overall would be how it uncalibrates at every loading screen. So whatever way you were facing as it's loading, you're then going to be facing that way again. So before you know it, next thing you're looking up at the air, because that's where the screen is, and it's not worked. Right, I'll do my review of Thrill of the Fight. Fights. We got this recommended to us after we started doing our weekly fitness vlogs for Can VR Make You Fit? And I'm glad we did, because it's actually a really fun game to play. The fights themselves are a lot more technical. You have to actually box to open up your opponent. So body, head, head, whichever way, but you have to look for those weaknesses in your opponent. When we first played this game, it caught us a bit unawares. You put your gum shield in when you're ready to start, and then before you know it, your opponent's in your face. It wasn't until I watched the stream back that you realised that you've been teleported into the middle of the ring. During the fight, it feels like the actual power of your punches makes a difference, as opposed to just hitting, which was actually really good. Just make sure you warm up first and there's no one around you, because the last thing you want to do is smack someone across the room as you're playing a game. After every fight, the round scoring's good, so you can see how you've scored each round individually. I still think the computer's biased towards Ugly Joe, because it took me that many goes to beat him, but it is good to see at the end, like a real boxing fight. I played this one on the Rift S, so unlike Creed on the PSVR, I could actually move around a lot more to fight the characters and fight the opponents. It recommends a 2 meter by 2 meter play area. We had a 2 meter by 1.5 meters, so I was still really conscious of where I was, but it does submerge you more into a fight being on the Oculus than it does on the PSVR. As you're fighting, cuts appear on your opponent, so in between rounds the cut man must be really good, because the cuts actually get smaller in the break, which is a nice little added touch. The audience watching are nowhere near as enthusiastic as they are in Creed. They look like a bunch of brainless zombies that are stood there just to watch your fight, and that they've been paid to watch it. They don't move at all. Both games would have probably been best played on a Quest 2, as opposed to doing one on the PSVR and one on the Rift S. That way I wouldn't have to worry about wires or cameras and could just move around and enjoy the game a bit more. But unfortunately we don't have one of them. Both games will get your heart rate up, and regardless they will make you nice and sweaty. Interestingly, the Virtual Reality Institute for Health and Fitness has Creed 7.43 METs, which is equivalent to playing tennis, whereas Thrill of the Fight is at 14.59 METs, which is equivalent to rowing. And I can completely agree with that, because after playing Thrill of the Fight my shoulders were on fire. If you're limited on space and just want something fun to play, then I would probably say just go Creed. If you want something more realistic, which is a real fighting experience, then I'd have to say the winner of these two, in my opinion, is Thrill of the Fight. It just feels like a real boxing game. The fact that your power's taken into it, the fact that you have to do techniques, it just wins hands down on that regards. That's me done on my first review. As I mentioned, stay tuned and I will do punch pad workout versus box VR. So as I mentioned, like and subscribe and you get a notification when that's ready. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Bye!